You're not going to believe this, people, but drug companies are paying doctors. Can you believe it? Yes, every commercial that you see is, well, actually a fake doctor usually in the commercial, and then a half hour of symptoms and potential suicide, thoughts of suicide, diarrhea, vomiting, all that good stuff. But a federal website has come out with some information related to just how much the drug companies are paying doctors, and we've got some info for you, so let's take a look. All right, so this is from ProPublica, and this is the amount of doctors that each of these companies have been paying. Now, that's nothing new, and there are some reasons that that can be good. They have to figure out, if these things work, and you sometimes need doctors to do that. The website includes 4.4 million payments to more than 500,000 healthcare professionals from August to December of 2013, adding to $3.5 billion in the pockets of the doctors, and we've got a little more info for you. So this is sales and speaker fees. So Novartis, they had $19 billion in sales in 2013, and they paid out $13 million. AstraZeneca, they made less, paid out almost double. And Forest, I think, is kind of interesting. On $4 billion, they paid out the most, $32 million. So we see these things all the time, and something about it inherently, I think, seems nefarious. Doctors being paid by drug companies. But sometimes I think there are reasons, as I alluded to. There are reasons. You need some doctors to be involved in putting together the drugs. You're already shaking your head no, but I'm going to go to Lissette first. Is there some, before we get to the dangerous part of this that we all know about, is there sometimes a reason that doctors and drug companies do have to be kind of in collusion
Look, I think
together,
I think medical device companies and pharmaceutical companies would say, sure, absolutely, we need to educate other doctors. We need an expert doctor to educate other doctors about a particular product or a device. And in some cases, yeah, it may have some benefits, right? If the doctor was involved in the design of a particular medical device, sure, you should educate other doctors on how to use it. Unfortunately, though, what happens is that these doctors are oftentimes paid outrageous sums of money, some hundreds of thousands of dollars, to give talks. And that's where I think it gets really tricky, and where there could potentially be a conflict of interest. Now, I think to further this research coming out of the Affordable Care Act or the Sunshine Act that is saying we have to have this data, one thing that's missing, though, is to know in which cases there is a conflict of interest and in which there is not. So if a doctor, for example, is involved in a particular medical device, is that doctor using that device on his or her patients? Those are the types of questions we need to be asking to determine a conflict of interest.
Right, and of course we want to believe that our doctors are doing things that are scientifically sound and ethically sound and abiding by their oath. But when you start getting paid a lot of money and then you have two choices of drugs, well, the guys that are paying you, you might start pushing them.
Sure. Well, I'm going to temper it just a little. Most doctors are paid between like $2,000 and $3,000 for a speaking fee, which is a pretty standard speaking fee. Like, I know that sounds crazy,
right?
But that's like how much an author would get paid for to
so
give
you're not inherently doing something bad for $2,000. You're saying if it was $1 million, you might be more inclined.
No. I'm just saying, like, let's temper this a little bit. It's most doctors aren't paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to go and give a talk. And most of the money is going towards speaking fees, but also towards dinners, towards gifts, towards things like that. I think the fundamental problem here is that we don't have strong regulation trying to separate the powers that be between physicians, pharmaceutical and medical device companies, and the insurance company. There's like a large kind of medical industrial complex that happens in this country. And I mean, just as a point of reference, we are the only Western industrialized nation that allows pharmaceutical commercials on television.
Yeah.
In no other country is it legal to have a commercial for a pharmaceutical. That's something that a doctor should recommend to a patient. We shouldn't be shopping for pharmaceuticals. We shouldn't be, directly marketed toward. And I think that this is another place where there's a lot of conflict that comes in, but it's only because the system allows it. I don't specifically blame doctors.
Right.
I also don't really specifically blame pharmaceutical companies. This is the culture in America, and it's perfectly legal to do so. And because it's perfectly legal to do so, of course they're going to try and get a leg up by doing so. It's easy for me to sit back and go, that's immoral, but on the free market, are they really going to care about whether or not it's moral?
Right, so that's the kind of interesting part, because you really can't blame the doctors for taking the money, which is legal. You can't blame the companies for paying them, because that's also legal. It doesn't make it right. I don't know. But what this reminds me of was I once went to a psychiatrist to get, I think I've talked about this on the show before, to get Xanax because when I was on a plane, I was getting, I was freaking out, a little stressed. Xanax. He then wanted to prescribe some other drug to me for time shift disorder, which now I've Googled, it's not even a real disorder. And he had a tape dispenser on his desk with the name of the company on it. I mean, I kid you not. I mean, I've bought weed from guys. The weed guys never tried to sell me other drugs. You know what I mean? But you know what I mean? The weed guy was never like, hey, you want some heroin? No. But that's what these guys are doing. And isn't that that's the inherent problem? That's everybody's fault. It's the doctor's fault for being overzealous.
Right.
And literally the freaking tape dispenser. So it's everybody's
The tape
fault.
dispenser really gets
It's
it.
it's a systemic issue. We're putting profit before health, and that's what needs to change. And because if that doesn't change, we're going to continue to have issues like this one and many more, and we're not going to get adequate healthcare. This is why we have such terrible healthcare. For being one of the most, developed nations, for being such a wealthy nation, we're down at the bottom in terms of quality of healthcare and outcomes, and that's a problem.
I don't know if that's true. I think we actually have very good healthcare in this country. I think it's incredibly expensive. I think that we're very low ranked on how much people are saddled with lifetime debt because of healthcare. But we have we have world-class healthcar in this country.
Right. But it still depends how much money you have, right?
Right.
Yeah, to some extent, yes. I mean, we do have the Affordable Care Act now, which is not the silver bullet by any stretch. It's a stepping stone. I think once we can get to a single payer system, we're going to see some improvement. But yeah, we definitely have good health care in this country. It's just ungodly expensive, and that's because it's just not I personally think it's because it's just not well regulated.
Yeah, and that's a whole other topic. All right, so last thing on this, is this just more reason why weed should be legal? Because
jump.
you got a headache, smoke some, a bit of a jump, bit of a scientific jump. But really, all these prescription pills, that every time I watch these commercials and all that stuff, the diarrhea, the vomiting, all that, blah, blah, blah. And weed, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't have any of that stuff.
I don't recommend actually smoking weed if you have a headache. I think that's the one thing weed's actually not good for.
Not
it
good
tends
for a
to make
headache.
your headache worse. But weed's not a cure-all. I don't like it when you see people in the movement saying,
cannabis
"Oh,
oil
it
people,
fixes everything," and blah blah. But it is a completely viable medication. There's absolutely no reason that it should be Schedule I. It should definitely be available for patients to be able to take marijuana for specific symptoms. I personally think it should be available for recreational use too, because it's not fucking dangerous.
Yeah.
But it should for sure be one of the options available.